Hi, this is Samantha Clark, and this is my very late screencast on academic language and differentiated instruction. So first, let's look at Zweier's and Crawford's academic conversations. So in this book, there are 5 core skills that Zweier's and Crawford emphasize. 1 is elaboration and clarification for students. 2 is supporting ideas with examples. 3 is building on and or challenging others' ideas. And 4 is paraphrasing. 5 is synthesizing points. These are all skills that we also emphasize in ELA, but they specify that there are 9 more skills that should be taught in ELA. 1 is evaluating the importance, role, and contribution within a piece. 2 is taking multiple perspectives, so looking at content from various angles, looking at the pros, the cons, comparing and contrasting. Along with that, 3 is interpreting and inferring, so not just looking at the surface text, but looking at the subtext. 4 is persuading and arguing, so this is a big one in rhetoric and ERWC. We want our students to be able to persuade and argue not just in writing, but in speaking. And 5, applying and transferring to new contexts. So we want them to be able to gather skills that they can use in other classes and in future classes. 6 is comparing, so taking multiple texts and comparing what is similar. 7 is considering ethics behind the author and behind the content and the context. 8 is analyze the craft. So this could be devices, this could be structure. And 9 is creating and communicating. Again, not just in writing, but in speaking. So for Tomlinson and McTeague's integrating differentiated instruction, understanding by design, they have 4 main elements as well. 1 is whom we teach. We need to consider our students because they are different every year. 2, where we teach, the environment. It's much different if we're teaching in a huge classroom of 40 students in downtown San Diego versus if we're teaching a classroom of 15 students in La Jolla. So they're very different environments. 3, we need to consider what we teach, the content. And 4, how we teach, so our instruction. So the steps to this that they identify is 1, we need to identify desired learning results. So if we are specifically trying to teach them how to write an argument, all of our activities up to that point will be designed for that. 2, determining acceptable evidence of student learning. So how are we going to tell that students know how to write an argument? What about their essay is showing us that they now know how to do this? 3, planning learning instruction with the goal in mind. So our goal is for them to write a rhetorical paper. So all of our instruction leads up to that point. 4, regard learner differences as valuable. So some students may already love debate, but some students hate it and aren't into politics at all. We can access the background of the students that like debate to help them in this new context, but some students we might need to start fresh with. 5, addressing affective needs. So some students may not feel comfortable, so we need to make sure to address that. 6, periodically reviewing learning goals. So we're not just waiting till the end. We're constantly reminding students that they will need to be writing an essay. These are the points on the rubric that we're trying to address. We're doing this activity because of this essay. 7, assess before, during, and after. Before, to access background knowledge, what do they already know? During, how effective is the instruction that I'm giving them? And after, have the goals been met? Be flexible. If none of the students are getting it, maybe you need to plan another week on this really important essay. None of the students are writing in time, maybe you need to take a day for them to write in class. The plan will always change. 9, gather evidence of learning, so that would be that assessment at the end or assessments throughout. For Schmoker, he discusses improving student learning through evidence-based instruction. So essentially, he's talking about teaching with simplicity. So don't use really complicated language. Don't try to teach a bunch of things at once. Be very simple about what you're trying to teach. 2, be coherent and have content-rich curriculum. So we want our curriculum to be based on skills, of course, but the content needs to be authentic. 3, effective implementation of the Common Core standards. So we're not just putting the Common Core standard on the board with its very complex language. You will write an argument is probably more effective. Then students will be able to rhetorically analyze a piece is a lot more complex than you'll evaluate someone's argument. 4, be very explicit about some instruction. Some things we need to just explicitly teach our students to do. 5, effective learning objectives. So our objectives for our students are gauged by what they already know and what they need to know how to do. 6, effective tasks. So the tasks that we're choosing for them to do lead up to our goal effectively. 7, authentic assessments. So our assessment at the end isn't just some boring write a paper. It has a very specific purpose that the students know. 8, evidence-based practices. Always using research and scholarship to support our teaching. So specifically, ELA learning, so improving ELA learning through evidence-based instruction. He has a lot of good points. One big one is make sure we're always making our students more literate in everything we do, because that's our job as English teachers. And then reading and writing instruction founded on evidence, again, making sure everything is founded on scholarship and research, especially in language arts, because some students may already know specific things about grammar, and we need to make sure that we're teaching them from an effective standpoint. We need to include broad, abundant reading, because this has been evident as successful. We need to teach literature, nonfiction, and literary nonfiction. So we can't just assume, oh, they're going to be reading nonfiction in their other classes. We don't need to do it in my class, because they may not be. And in order for students to develop that literacy, we need to assure that they are receiving it, at least in our classroom. And then most of all, we should have literature because they're not reading that anywhere else. We need to balance skills and standards. While the standards are important, students still have basic principles that they need to learn how to do. They need to learn how to structure an essay, how to develop an argument, not just specifically for the standards, but for the skills they'll need in their lifetime. For reading instruction, the big thing he talks about is preventing read-aside. So read-aside is developing human beings that don't like to read. That's often what we do in our English classrooms is we're just reading effortlessly all the time, and then students hate reading. So we need to make sure to include some aesthetic reading as well, making sure students are enjoying the literature, and making sure that we're teaching them how to read it effectively. Balancing genres, if they're always reading the same thing, it's not effective. Building reading stamina, teaching them how to read quicker and more effectively, make it easier for them. Discussion, so integrating that academic conversation, these skills into reading, and providing guiding questions so students have a purpose while they are reading. Writing instruction should be a response to texts. It shouldn't just be a basic writing. There should always be a model or a response taking place. Clear expectations on what they will be graded on so they know how to write it and they know what grade they will get at the end. It's not a mystery to them. And teaching them how to outline a paper and the structure of papers. All right, thank you so much.